Hi, everybody. Welcome to episode 42 of Elves, Rings, and Nerdy Things. I am one of your co-hosts, Sean, here with my other co-host, Sam. Sam, how are you doing on this very late Monday night?
I'm doing well. Listeners might be able to tell I'm on the tail end of a cold, so pardon any sniffling or coughing. Today was also my birthday, so
yeah, holy shit! In our little pre-talk, I forgot to even say happy birthday to you. If you round, you're closer to 40 than you are 30.
The funny thing is, I completely forgot I was turning 35. I thought I was turning 34, and then I got a lovely letter from my mom late last week, and it said happy 35th. I think it was either my mom or my dad. They sent this, one letter, and they each wrote separately, and I was like, oh, I'm 35.
Yeah, man. Time is a weird cosmic soup.
Yep. And then we saw your folks this past weekend, and your dad said something like, "You're halfway to 70."
Oh my God. Yeah,
I know. That was crazy.
I'm only halfway to 62, so I've got that.
Yeah. Aging. Don't do it if you can get away with it. Yeah. Anyway, it's a late night, but birthday was fun. Looking forward to talking about this episode with you. I think there's a lot to talk about. Some good, some bad.
I think looking at the notes, we had more good for this episode than the last one.
We do. I was trying to think of a metaphor earlier, and it's kind of, the show is maybe running toward a cliff, and this episode, they slowed down slightly. So the overall trajectory is not good, but this episode, there are certain things that they should continue to pursue, certain things that they should discontinue. I'm not optimistic. We'll talk about the specifics, but I think there was some good in this episode for sure.
Well, should we just get into it?
Let's do it. Let's summarize and get right into our reactions.
Yeah, fuck it. This summary was written by me, so it's probably not going to be as good. For episode 4, we do actually have a Wikipedia summary, so you don't have to listen to Sam and I kind of cobble one together. But here's my summary for Witcher Season 3, Episode 3, entitled Reunion. We discover Jaskier might have a crush on Radovid. Jaskier and Geralt.
Did you say Raskier? That rascally Raskier?
Well, I was about to say it's their couple name. It's their power couple name.
Oh, yeah. Okay, I like it.
Raskovid. Jaskier and Geralt then take the Fake Ciri to Geralt's mother's druid friend, where we learn Geralt's mom is dead. And Fake Ciri has been mind-controlled. Someone talks through her and attacks the group. Finally, Geralt learns Fake Ciri was from Aretuza. Yennefer goes to a bank and asks for money from a friend, where she also meets Tissaia. Yennefer convinces Tissaia to help Ciri. Ciri goes out on the town and fights a wyvern, and later is mistaken as a sorceress's novice. Ciri and Yennefer fight over Aretuza and how awful the people there are, while Yennefer recommends a conclave of mages to Tissaia to push for unity amongst the Brotherhood. King Vizimir has made an agreement with Nilfgaard behind Philippa and Dijkstra's backs. Dijkstra and Philippa conspire to find a way to get Vizimir back under their thumbs. And the decision is that Dijkstra and Philippa send Vizimir his wife's head and blame Nilfgaard for the assassination. Philippa realizes, after a night of coital intrigue, that Rience is serving a master who is working with Nilfgaard. Eastred discovers a book of monoliths he's been looking for, has been sent to Aretuza by the Emperor of Nilfgaard. Gallatin complains to Emir about Francesca and her leadership. To prove his loyalty, Emir has Cahir murder his friend Gallatin. Ciri runs away from Yennefer via horse and is chased by the Wild Hunt for some reason, and Geralt randomly shows up and chases them away using his Witcher signs. And all of those little plot lines, some of them only had like a sentence, like Eastrid, but that is the gist of what happened in this episode. We're going to start with complaints because I feel like it's always better to end on a sweet note than a sour note. So, what do you want to start with, Sam?
Let's start with the ending of the episode. This is the first reaction that we have in our notes. I believe you put it here. The whole scene with the wild hunt. It ends with Ciri picking up a piece of armor or something off the ground and said they were real, which is, as an audience member watching that scene, my first reaction was, oh, is this real or is this her imagination?
Because they don't even show Ciri like grab a horse and leave town.
No,
they just show her like galloping down a road. I
have every part of this scene for me was problematic, just from a writing standpoint and then from an execution standpoint. The scene of her riding on the horse is so terrible from a just visual perspective. It is very obviously a fake horse. Anybody can tell that. And then it's on a green screen.
At least it's not the horse from Rings of Power.
Yeah,
that one should have been a CGI horse.
Yeah. Well, did you see that thing? Did we cover that PETA story? How PETA wants them to use CGI horses for everything.
I think we talked about it a couple of months ago. Yeah.
Yeah, because like one horse died during filming, or during like not even filming, like pre-production. Anyway, so that the Ciri on the horse so obviously fake, and it's fake because it's a fake horse head. It's obvious green screen, and then her motion is all wrong. Have you ever ridden a horse?
Yes. Okay. Not in like a saddle and.
Okay, so I've ridden a horse. I've ridden several horses. I know a little bit about horse riding, to the point where when you're in the horse, you actually have to go up and down with the rhythm that the horse is trotting. It's part of the motion, so that I don't know exactly why, but it's the mechanics of riding a horse. So she's not even doing that.
Motion of the ocean, baby.
Motion of the ocean. And I have to say, like, I know that they use real horses on the show, and the people actually have to ride horses. So just nobody thought to mention, oh, by the way, you know how you actually ride horses? You should do that on the fake horse so it doesn't look fake. So that was bad. And then, yeah, we already know that the wild hunt is after Ciri. Why are we introducing why are we reinserting another group that is out for Ciri? It is, at this point, Nilfgaard, the elves,
Eastrid,
the
Brotherhood,
the Brotherhood generally,
Rience
in particular,
Vizimir,
the Wild Hunt. I get it. Like Ciri is important, but you don't need to beat us over the head with all of these different actors, and by actors I mean in the sense of people in the universe. Just stop it. The whole point of that scene. The real point of that scene is to reconnect Ciri and Geralt. She's already emotionally disturbed from her fight with Yennefer. He's already concerned about her because of everything that he knows is happening in his encounter with the fake Ciri. You don't need to throw in the wild hunt to heighten the stakes of that scene. That was my thinking.
Well, the worst part about the whole thing too is that we went through the whole second season. And in the books, there's always that, is the wild hunt real? That's like a common trope. Because people are like, oh, it's kind of like the end of times. Like, it tends to be crazy people who are like, oh yeah, I saw the wild hunt.
It's like the UFOs of this world. Yeah.
Over the horizon. That means bad winter or something. But they seem to be like crazy people who are doing all this stuff. But the writers in season 2, it shouldn't be a surprise to Ciri that they're real, because she was possessed by one of them. So the writers have led us to believe. So the whole concept of her being chased and then having to see like a physical piece of armor for her to go, oh, that's real. I mean, girl, you were possessed by one.
Yeah. Did you
forget
that
real.
Time you and your quote unquote parents were transported interdimensionally and were run down by those people up until, was it Ciri or Yennefer? I think it was Yennefer who basically got her magic back at that point, right? And transported them out of that world.
Either her or Ciri did. I think it may have been Ciri.
If it was Ciri, then that's even more of a reason. Like, you do remember using your latent power to save yourself from these people. And here's the other question: when exactly? How much time has passed? That's something I know we have another note about the time and space here, but you think in the days, weeks, months after the encounter with the Wild Hunt, it would have been discussed at some point. And this is where some of these side plots are so aggravating, that we spend time with Istrid in a fucking tavern for no reason to learn about a book that he didn't get. Like, save that for the end when everybody is going to be together on Aretuza, which I haven't seen, but I know is going to happen because of the trailer. So spend maybe just a tiny bit of time. How about Ciri can brag to one of the people that she meets for the first time that I've seen the Wild Hunt, to remind the audience that that is a force out in the world. Then you don't need to show them chasing her until it's relevant to the general plot. Because is the Wild Hunt going to show up at the ball on Thanet at the end of at this volume of the season? I don't think so. Now, don't quote me on that, but it would be really bad if that did happen. Anyway, rant over.
Well, I'm going to go so far as to say I don't want to see the Wild Hunt again in this season.
Yeah, I agree.
It was pointless to have him now, and I think it'll be especially pointless to have him later. But the whole thing with, and we'll talk about the writers more later, but it's just the writers were the ones who decided that they were going to make Volothmir like the main villain of season 2, and they're the ones who decided they're going to make Volothmir a member of the Wild Hunt. So it's just such poor writing. In this season, when you have Ciri say, "Oh, they were real," and that's why it was my first thing that I put in our note sheet, because it left such a bad taste in my mouth at the end of this episode. So I wanted to make sure it was the first thing we talked about. But
yeah, I'm right there with you.
I'm sure we'll talk more about the writers here.
Oh,
probably in this next point.
All of our complaints, I think, with the exception of CGI and stuff like that, which maybe if the writers could trim down their freaking scripts and you didn't have so many people, there could be a little bit more money for the visuals. Anyway, yes, but let's move on to this next point here.
Next point. Again, people keep flying around the map without portals. My only example of this is Geralt in particular. The episode opens with Jaskier in his house, I suppose, with the lady from episode 1 of this season who was throwing all of his stuff out onto the.
It's Vespula, which I understand that she's a character
Vespula.
from the video games, not from the books.
Yeah.
Okay. I've never played the video games. I understand that could be an issue with at least my commentary on The Witcher, but I
don't think it matters.
Yeah, I mean, the video games are themselves an adaptation or reimagining of the novels. The novels are where the characters were. It's the closest to the author's original intent for the characters in the story. So,
yeah, the games aren't canon. So
yeah, okay.
But my example in this, so we have Geralt. The last time we see him, he's out in the woods with the fake Ciri. He shows up at Jaskier's house. Then they go to a random place in the woods, and then all of a sudden he's at Ciri's aid at the very end of the episode. And they don't show him travel anywhere. He's just constantly appearing at all of these places.
Yeah, we have no idea where people are in relation to one another. We have no idea how much time passes between different character interactions. There are no clues in the actual episode to try to even decipher how much time is passing. So it feels as if all of this happens in 2 days, 1 day. I mean, we never see anybody going to sleep, really. We see Jaskier waking up. We see, you see one person having a dinner at night and things like that, but there's really no indication that significant time has passed. And then the other thing that everybody is so close together when they need to be for the plot, so that Geralt can knock on Jaskier's door at just the right time, and then they're instantly in the woods with the fake Ciri, and then the next scene they're at the cabin to meet with Otto and Annika, and then Geralt is back with Ciri. But
yeah, are we left to believe? are we led to believe that Geralt just left fake Ciri in the woods by herself?
That's what one would have to imagine. So
Because she's
you're
like laying there in a stupor when he and Jaskier walk up to her.
Yeah. You think he would have like dragged her along, and then we could have gotten a little glimpse of maybe Vespula's characterization where she becomes like a mothering, nurturing figure. And it's like, oh, maybe there's going to be a little bit of tension here with Jaskier, and she wants a domesticated home life. And yeah, she's okay with him philandering, but she wants a baby or whatever. That could be interesting. Instead, we just get people zipping around the map with zero consequences. There's no, fake Ciri isn't menaced by some bandits, and we get a fight scene thrown in there or anything like that. And then the other thing is, this is all done for convenience, but then they ignore the implications of what it would actually be like if people were this close together. For instance, and I cannot believe that in this world where you can just walk within a couple hours and get to anybody that you see, Codringer and Fenn were murdered in the middle of a big city, and that news didn't reach Radovid, who was going to investigate the information that they had. Jaskier, who is familiar with them, has met them.
It reached Radovid because Philippa was there to see it happen.
But
Jaskier.
Jaskier, I mean, you would think Jaskier would have learned about it. Primarily, right? One, because he is a bard and he's out in public and he's connecting with people, and two, because he knows Radovid, and theoretically Radovid would know. Although I don't recall if Philippa told Radovid or if that was something that was between Philippa and Dijkstra, or Philippa and, I think it was just Philippa and Dijkstra, but maybe Radovid was eavesdropping or they were having a conversation with an earshot. Either way, people are close together, locations are close together when they need to be, and people can move as fast as the writers need them to move, but then you ignore the other implications of a very small universe, i.e., people don't have information that would be like the talk about town is Codringer and Fens were fucking murdered and their shop was burned down. Anyway.
They also don't explain how Geralt gets to Ciri in the end. I know we're told that Ciri has a talisman with like a GPS locator on it. All we're told is that Yennefer tells Ciri how to like say the enchantment to reach Yennefer.
Yeah. It was paired with Yennefer. And then we see the consequences of her doing that.
Yeah.
In the episode, and then we don't get any indication that Geralt was aware of it, unless those like voices were supposed to be the magic notifying Geralt. Again, super convenient. And there wasn't even anything like, Geralt, how did you know I was here?
No, you could have. They should have had a scene when she was right before she gets found by Yennefer and the other sorceresses. It could have been like a cutscene to Geralt being like, "Oh, do I hear something?" And then later on, when she's being chased by the Wild Hunt, then it's more believable. But you don't have that, and instead you just have Geralt just show up all of a sudden, just in time.
Or you could just adapt the book, which she hears some scuttlebutt that Geralt is at a town nearby, and so she sneaks away, steals a horse, goes to that town, meets Geralt, and fucking normally.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Geralt, Ciri, and Yennefer together return to Gors Velen and then go to Aretuza. You don't need to insert the Wild Hunt and some magical talisman. Although the talisman is from the books, but not the way that they used it at the end of the scene or the episode. Anyway.
So the next point I wanted to say, you got it in my head that the show is trying to be too much of like the modern Game of Thrones or like this decade's Game of Thrones. And for the most part, it's like these random sex scenes. And the last episode with Philippa whipping your BDSM that you really like.
I'm not going to respond to that.
Okay. But then in this episode, like there's just a random sex scene between Philippa and the Queen's murderer. And the only point that the whole scene serves is that Philippa realizes that Rience is working for a like mage who's working with Nilfgaard. And that's it. I feel like there's so many other ways she could have come to that conclusion, but instead they just like gave us a weird sex scene.
Yeah, I disliked this scene a lot. One, Game of Thrones was obviously it was HBO, and I don't know what the kind of viewership or the TV ratings criteria, what that would do to Netflix if this was a hard R, like a TVMA type thing, if they showed an actual sex scene. But they didn't hesitate to show nudity in season 1 at all, including Anya Charlotta. I don't think we've had any nudity in season 3 so far, have we?
None in season 3 so far.
Yeah, so they're kind of like, so they're shying away from nudity and giving us things that are supposed to be erotic. The BDSM scene was not erotic whatsoever, and that was failed sex position, I would say. This is, I guess it kind of advances the plot, but yeah, to your point, why didn't Philippa just know these things? Like, and the other issue I had is that these two people just committed murder and treason and had sex, and what they choose to talk about is a meeting that they had earlier in the day, right?
The worst part for me is that it was like a magic.
Yes,
orgasm.
that was it. Yeah, that was the other thing. It was like a weird magic thing, but it also like seemed like it was a not. I don't know. It was not erotic. And
It was weird.
Even in like when Game of Thrones would do it, it would be kind of like, I remember one scene in particular, and I won't describe it in case. Well,
you don't have to.
There's an opening. There's a sex position scene in Game of Thrones that involves like multiple instances of oral sex plus voyeurism. And they're very obvious it's like so obvious that I'm struggling with the words to describe.
Yeah, where are you going?
Oh, I'm just, it's like, they're like, here, this is a like these people are doing this and it's gross, but you're going to watch it. And then we're going to use this to deliver some information. Here it was, we want to do a sex scene, but we're not actually going to. So it's going to be shot weirdly, and there's not going to be any camera. The camera isn't going to linger on anything in particular. It's just going to keep jumping around back and forth. There's going to be a bunch of, magical effects, and then it's going to end, and everybody's wearing all the clothes that they have on. So it's not really a sex scene, even though they were supposedly having sex.
Mm-hmm. Moving on. Vizimir is too goofy for Sean. He's almost like a caricature.
He is. Yeah.
And even when his wife, his queen, he sees her head in a box, it's so over the top, like the actor's reaction to it. And I'm not blaming the actor, because this is like the writers and directors are getting this out of him. It seems so over the top that it seems fake, and it's hard to buy, especially with how he is in the rest of the episode and series so far. But yeah, not a fan of Vizimir so far.
Yeah, I don't have any particular affection for Vizimir in the books. He's not a major character. I don't know if he's a major character in the video games. I know Radovid is more of a major character, at least in Wild Hunt. Going back to the Game of Thrones reference or comparison, in Game of Thrones, that scene would have included somebody throwing up, and it would not have been comedic. It would have been visceral and real, and the type of thing that a real person would do if they saw a decapitated head in a box, especially if it was their wife.
But we got that from Radovid, which was good.
Yeah, no,
he was terrified of it.
Yeah, the Radovid, that actor is great. His portray, I don't. It's like an island in a sea of terrible decisions and portrayals, and then you have Radovid like standing firm.
But with Vizimir too, like I'm almost to the point where I don't like, this show is supposed to be gritty. Like we've said, it's kind of a mix between Lord of the Rings and Game of Thrones, like George R.R. Martin style. And I don't buy that a character like Vizimir would be able to maintain his kingship.
You're 100% right.
With how goofy and like, there's no way Dijkstra would allow this guy to remain on the throne, because it's not good for Redania.
Yes.
So anytime I see Vizimir, I'm like, he would, if they actually went by what the show was supposed to be like, in terms of all of the other characterization that they've made about the show, like Amir, I totally buy it. Guy's fucking ruthless. I could see how he could become the emperor of Nilfgaard. But Vizimir, and it's supposed to be like the largest military in the Northern Kingdoms, and one of the strongest. Like, there's no way this guy would remain king for this long.
You're completely right. He is a Disney king. He is a goofy.
He's a Disney king in Game of Thrones.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, that's a good way to put it. Disney king in Game of Thrones. I like that. And it's the unfortunate thing is they want to give us these scenes that we don't get in the books of Dijkstra and Philippa at court with Vizimir doing all this politicking, but the end result is you just make all of these characters unlikable and you chip away at the believability of the premise. So Vizimir is the most unkingly king. Dijkstra seems to be, for the head of Redanian intelligence, he doesn't really seem to be all that up to speed on what's happening. If we're establishing what's going on in this episode, the Queen of Redania and the King of Redania are meeting independently with emissaries from Nilfgaard. And Dijkstra had no idea that this was happening, but Radovid did. We don't know how Radovid found out about it. You think that if you're the head of Redanian intelligence, and in his introduction, don't we show him like foiling an assassination plot against Vizimir? I think we do in season 2.
Yes, with the wine.
Yeah,
he makes one of his like most trusted.
Yeah, so
like advisors drink the wine and then he dies.
Exactly. So that to me that showed that one, he's not afraid to kill people when necessary, and we can talk about that with the murder of Hedwig. But it also showed that he has his intelligence apparatus working within the castle, which is exactly where you would want it to work to uncover plots. And so I just find it completely unbelievable that this whole Nilfgaard negotiation thing has been happening and Dijkstra didn't know about it. And so it undermines his credibility as the character he's supposed to be. And it also, and you mentioned this, I think in our pre-recording conversation, it detracts from his sense of dread. He's not intimidating if he doesn't know what's going on. The only reason he's scary is because he should know about everything happening in the castle.
Yes. It makes him more intimidating when you see him less, and he does so much more behind the scenes, because then when he shows up in the book, you're like, oh my God, it's Dijkstra, and he's pulling strings, and he's an intimidating character. But now we're seeing him so much, and we're seeing him fuck up, and it's like, okay.
Yeah. Like that scene where Vizimir is playing the medieval Yai game, like throwing a metal ball at some schmuck. Dijkstra gets visibly upset and has an outburst. I think he says something like, "You're being played for a fool." The head of intelligence, who's supposed to be this cool operator, is having outbursts because he's not being listened to. It's ridiculous. And then like we don't have any other advisors of the king. We can say Radovid is an advisor. We have Dijkstra and Philippa. But there's nobody else. Like you would have to have some other characters there. And that's the thing I just don't buy. There's
the two of them died because they were going to kill Vizimir.
Oh yeah, in season 2, and they just didn't get replaced. Okay.
Yeah. Just haven't. We don't know how much time has passed. It could have been only like 4 days.
It probably was. It was probably just 4 days ago. Yeah.
Most job postings are up for at least a month before you.
It's true. Especially then. I mean,
interview process. Yeah.
They don't have Indeed, as far as we know. Yeah. A lot of the stuff going on in Redania is just very frustrating because it is you said it's Disney characters in a Game of Thrones setting, and that's true for Vizimir, but it's also true for the other folks as well. We didn't get any scenes with Hedwig and Vizimir. There's that dinner scene where she says one thing, and then her head shows up in a box.
Yep.
And we don't really care about Vizimir because they don't make him a sympathetic character at all. Like you don't see him struggling with the burden of kingship and these difficult decisions that he has to make, and the fact that he might have to send his nation to war.
We don't care about Hedwig at all.
We don't care about Hedwig, and then so she dies. And I think, can we get into the spoilers?
Nope.
Okay, so
We'll
Either
cross
way,
that bridge when we get there.
we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Okay, so that's that. But TLDR, Disney characters in a Game of Thrones world.
Next up, the show makes the elves plot line almost obsolete to this point. And you added it's a waste of screen time. There's two parts of the elvish plot line in this episode. The first one is Gallatin going to Nilfgaard, which they only had to add in because they fucked up Cahir's character to begin with and wrote it all weird. So now you have to have a reason to have him be back on the good side to be able to get back in line with the books. And what they did was had him kill his friend Gallatin.
And maybe this was because my kid started crying or something when I was watching, but why did Amir tell Cahir to kill Gallatin?
He said something along the lines of, I know a good leader when I see one.
And he was referring to Cahir?
He was referring to Cahir, but then he was like, you need to prove your loyalty because I can't trust you right now. So to prove his loyalty to Amir, he tells him, and he says something along the lines of as well, discordance within the elven ranks is not good for Nilfgaard.
Okay.
So he needs to kill Gallatin to make sure that power is solidified under Francesca. And it's also a test for him because he knows Gallatin is Cahir's friend.
Okay.
So it's like, if you kill him, you're back on my good side and we're working together again.
Okay. So
but then it destroys Cahir's character though, because he's like murdering his best friend.
Now he's a turncoat murderer.
To believe,
yeah. I mean, you like the characterization of Amir? You like the portrayal that they're doing with him?
At this point, yes. There's things that I don't like that he constantly talks about this goddamn usurper.
Yeah.
Over and over again.
We get more of that in this episode. And we get it from Cahir.
We get it from Cahir, and it's getting really old, and I'm tired of hearing about this usurper. But Amir in the books is and even in the video games, is a background menacing character. And I didn't like his use in the last episode where he's just talking to the dwarven smith for some reason.
Talk about waste of screen time.
But in this episode, I really liked his scenes with Cahir because he comes off as that menacing character who can convince someone to kill his friend just to get back on his good side. So in a nutshell, I like him more than I dislike him up to this point in terms of characterization.
Okay. Well,
you're going to say you don't like him?
No, I think I'm still waiting to form a full opinion. So in season 1 and season 2, they would talk about him almost as a messiah, especially I think Fringilla. He found me when I was in a low place and, brought me up. And Cahir talks about him. He inspires loyalty and all this. I think they're going to need to show some of this instead of just telling the audience that he is this fantastic person, because so far the main thing that we've seen him do is in this episode order someone to kill their friend. He imprisoned his former Fringilla, his advisor, his mage. He's trying to track down his daughter. We don't really know why at this point,
nor do we need to.
We don't really need to. I mean, there's that's in the books. The reasons are the reasons in the books.
They are. And I think we'll get it in the show too. But I mean, I hear all that, but to me, the whole white flame nonsense is just like a visage that he kind of put on to consolidate power. At least that's my interpretation of everything up to this point. I don't even think he believes that he's the white flame. I think he's doing it in a tactful way to make sure that all of his supporters have this like godlike worship of him.
So I would buy that. I like that idea. The problem I have with it is that it would make sense if the peasants and the foot soldiers talked about him in this kind of religious way. Oh, the white flame, the savior of Nilfgaard, blah, blah, blah. But then the people really close to him kind of knew the real Amir, and it's all about, no, I'm just out for power and I want to control as much of the continent as possible. And maybe there's this like side thing about, my children and my bloodline, blah, blah, blah. But we don't get that. Instead, what we get is the people very close to him talk about him in this kind of Messiah way. And there's no real indication that it is a manufactured facade, right? I think, and again, not that I want us to spend more time with Amir, because the show is called The Witcher, and we spent most of this podcast talking about people other than Geralt of Rivia. So we don't need more time with Amir. We just need him to, if we're going to spend time with him, it just needs to be propelling the main drama of the story, not kind of tarnishing one of the characters from the books that actually has a really good arc that is great in the books.
Yeah. Well, anyway, that's my view on the White Flame thing, though. That's how I kind of
I like that. I think
get around the character.
If they wanted to, if that's the truth, there's a different way to do it, and I would have liked it, but I don't want to waste the screen time on it.
And we still might get it. I don't know.
True.
The only other elven plotline in this episode is just a weird aside to Francesca and Filavandrel for no reason whatsoever. They did not even need to be in this episode, because the only thing that happens is Francesca goes, where's Gallatin? And Filavandrel goes, oh, he went to Nilfgaard. Maybe we should prepare for like a mutiny or something. And then it's a cut scene, and then we don't see anything else. And that's it. That this minute scene between the two characters should have just been cut from the board and not even put in this episode.
Well, there were two other things in that scene that I remember happening, because both of them made me think, why are we spending time with them? There's one reference where Filavandrel says to Francesca, you're tired, you need to eat. And Francesca goes, I'll eat when they eat. Which, why don't you go raid some more caravans of bread? Why are you sitting around camp, everybody? Anyway.
Well, she's healing people because maybe they just got done.
So where's the food that they injure them? Anyway, the thing is, we spend they're supposed to show us that they're in this desperate situation, but it just comes off as soap opera drama because we don't actually see what's going on with them. We don't know anything about what they're doing. This is going to be a really great audio quality episode with me hacking along. And then go ahead. The final point of dialogue is that they do remind the audience that the elves are looking for Ciri, because Filavandrel has some line about how our scouts heard a rumor about her in Maribor, but it turned out to be nothing, or something along those lines. Which, just stop with this.
Where's Maribor? Right?
Yeah, where's Maribor? That's the thing.
Where are you guys?
You reference a town that we didn't even know existed. We have no idea where it is. Yeah, where are you? I'm sure they're right around the corner from wherever Geralt is hanging out in the woods, right? Because they're gonna see him next episode or something like that.
They could be there within 5 minutes of the episode.
Yeah.
Last point in our complaints for episode 3. This is one of yours.
Yes.
Yen and Tesea's conversation in the bank. Take it away, Sam.
So, I don't want to get too pedantic in my criticisms,
but I'm
about to get pedantic. So they have so Yennefer secures a bank vault in order to have a private conversation with Tessia, the point of which is to kind of reconcile between them and allow for Yennefer to get Ciri enrolled in Aretuza and in some form of protection. The conversation I was fine with. It was the lead up to the conversation where they're trying to, again, and this is going to the writers. Tessia says something along the lines of, isn't it funny that men work so hard to get this, and then they just stick it in a vault where it rusts? And she's holding some gold and silver coins or something like that, which...
Gold doesn't rust.
Gold doesn't rust. Silver doesn't rust.
Silver tarnishes.
It tarnishes, but it doesn't rust. So like iron, and then there's comments and then Yennefer has some comments about how, well, you can't do anything with it. You can't build with it or whatever it is. It's just some illusion some lie that we all buy into. And I was thinking, and this kept me up last night when I was thinking about it, because I did a rewatch on Sunday morning. Gold doesn't rust, silver doesn't rust, but it tarnishes. Gold and silver are considered valuable by every society in all places for all time in the world. The idea, the whole, and this is the writers trying to be clever, but they completely just broadcast their own ignorance about a very basic fact that anybody who's remotely interested in history or economics, or just has a passing, just watched Jeopardy once or twice, is going to know that gold and silver don't rust. And then the reason that people put money in banks is so that it grows and so that you get more money. And people don't just put money in banks to hold it there. They put it in banks to grow. And it's just like...
Well, and the worst part is like they're talking about the value of money, that it's like this human created thing, like it's not really valuable on its own. They're just explaining paper money.
Yes, that's the other thing.
They're explaining exactly what modern money is like, but this is not. They're like physically holding up like a handful of gold and silver.
Yeah, I'm listening to the Revolutions podcast. It's my dish doing podcast. Mm-hmm. And so I'm in the middle of the French Revolution right now. And during the chaos of the French Revolution, the Republican governments issued like, I think 2, maybe 3 different forms of paper currency, which ostensibly were backed by lands that the French government seized from the church. But eventually there was so little confidence in the French government's ability to translate that land into actual value that the currency fell off the face of the... It just was trading like 10-1 for face value. So people started using hard currency, or specie as it's called, gold and silver coins. Like those things, and like, yes, so they are talking about the shared illusion, the shared lie of paper currency, which, by the way, is true for the American dollar only since the early 70s, when Richard Nixon floated the US dollar on, quote, the full faith and credit of the United States. Prior to that, you could turn in paper currency for the gold reserves that the United States still holds, by the way. So they don't understand currency. They don't understand the actual physics of gold and silver. They don't understand banks. And they're just broadcasting the fact that they really aren't. I don't want to say you have to be qualified in order to write, but if you're going to write a medieval fantasy show,
it has to make sense.
It has to make sense. And those little details help with world building and verisimilitude. And there was one other thing in this episode which kind of irked me, which is related to, it was kind of in line with the whole bank thing. When Ciri and Fabio are walking around, he mentions how he's wheat intolerant. And that's like, no offense, because I know that you're a...
Yeah, tread lightly.
Are you technically celiac, or are you just gluten intolerant?
No, I'm gluten intolerant.
Anyway. As
I'm drinking my Ghost Fish gluten-free beer.
So there are people out there who are gluten intolerant. I don't know the extent to which gluten intolerance is documented throughout history. It is
no one would have known, even if it was a thing.
You never would have, and the reason that they wouldn't have known is because he either would have been dead or extremely sickly all the time, because
killed him.
You would not have been able to live without wheat in a medieval fantasy setting. It is the staple.
This is the part of the episode, everybody, where Sam gets really nitpicky.
Yeah, it's, again, I tell you, this is Sam's pedantic corner, but it's little things like that where it's just you're being drawn out of the fantasy, right? Yeah. And you're just being reminded that these people don't really know what they're talking about, and there's no reason to talk about it. It's just another reason, like, why are you trying to sound philosophical when you could just spend more energy trying to adapt the novel that your IP is actually based on, instead of inserting your own.
And part of the problem too is because the show's too rushed.
Yes.
And I feel like they just keep having the same conversation in the writing room where they're like, we need to get to this point. Oh, let's just have this quick scene, and then boom, we're exactly where we want to be. But that keeps selling the show short.
Yeah.
Selling the show short. That's a tough one to say. Let's
Anyway.
get to the positives very briefly. We've already talked about the first one. The head in a box. What's in the box? Radovid gets a brutal lesson from Dijkstra. Now, I liked this scene, A, because Radovid's acting was so good, and B, it shows that Dijkstra is willing to pretty much put himself on the line to ensure his control over the kingdom, that we really know who's in control of Redania at this point. And I mean, the whole Vizimir being a caricature, I can't comprehend him still being in power at this point. But if it's Dijkstra keeping him in power so he can control him, that would be something I'd be interested in. And I don't think that's the case as of now, but I'm hoping that we get more of this where Dijkstra is able to influence Vizimir and show that he's kind of puppeting the kingdom.
I like the scene for Radovid specifically. I did not like how they kind of went back on the Dijkstra characterization from episode 2, where he was demonstrating his regret over killing someone who could have been useful. I think my big problem with this is he should not have been caught by surprise that the queen and the king were negotiating with Nilfgaard in secret. And if I'm the thing is, they're going to have to portray Vizimir as being so dumb that he doesn't realize that somebody killed his queen other than the Nilfgaardians. Because it's like, because they didn't, Dijkstra gave this like half-hearted explanation for why the Nilfgaardians killed Hedwig. Oh, maybe she got a little too something, or somebody else killed her, right? Well, who benefits from Hedwig being killed? The people who don't want an alliance with Nilfgaard. And here's the other thing, and this is where, if you don't build out your small council of Redania, it becomes very obvious. Oh, who are the only people at court who don't want an alliance with Nilfgaard? Oh, Dijkstra and Philippa. Oh, I wonder if they could have killed her. Right?
But they've already made Vizimir out to be so dumb and a caricature of a king, and that it makes it believable that he would believe Dijkstra in this case.
But that's the problem, right? It's him not figuring this out necessitates him being a complete idiot, which undermines his believability as the king of a country. And then at the same time, if you have kind of his polar opposite in Radovid, it's like, well, okay, so what's stopping Radovid from telling Vizimir? Right? I mean, Dijkstra is threatening him.
Dijkstra says, basically, you knew about it. You'll be an accomplice to it.
I mean, I understand that Dijkstra makes that threat, but I think that's kind of hollow because, it's one of those things where, going back to this Game of Thrones thing, Game of Thrones would have, and specifically George R.R. Martin, not the DBs, it would have been so much better thought through and worked backward from where you want to go. It just seems very hackneyed that there are an actual character, a real person in Vizimir's position, would figure out that it was Dijkstra and Philippa. An actual person in Radovid's position would figure out a way to insulate himself from the backlash from Dijkstra and Philippa when he tells his brother that they killed the queen. Maybe you find the person who actually swung the blade. Chances are they're in the castle, right? If you're a little bit observant, maybe you'll notice that it was the kitchen maid, right? Or whatever her name. Her position is so strange because she's
like a handmaiden to the queen.
She's like a handmaiden. She's serving food. She's also delivering messages, but she's secretly Philippa's lover / an assassin. Anyway, I like Radovid. I think all the other stuff is either not executed now or will, when it continues to advance, will fall apart because it'll be unbelievable.
Next positive. this is one of mine. To say a test Ciri when she says that line, "Look at me, don't look away," and they have that like psychic confrontation, and then Tisea leaves with like a bloody nose or blood out of her eye. I can't remember which one it was.
I think her eye starts bleeding, and she has this kind of look of amazement or astonishment or surprise, concern on her face.
But I liked it because in the last season we have Tisea like torturing Cahir and putting her fingers into his brain and really fucking with him. And this is just like them looking at each other. And in that one little confrontation, Ciri is able to push back enough and resist enough that it causes Tisea to bleed out her eyeball. And to me, it just demonstrated Ciri's raw power, and we really haven't gotten a whole lot of that yet. Yeah, she screamed at a monolith and tore it down, but that means nothing to me. Like, apparently they make it out to be like this huge thing that she destroyed a monolith or whatever, but to me, it's just like a piece of rock that she broke. But then this is like the first instance of like her interacting with another incredibly powerful sorceress and is able to have this effect on her with no training at all. So I liked that demonstration of Ciri's power.
I would have appreciated getting Ciri's reaction to that. We linger with Tisea, and it like drove home the gravity of the interaction, but then it's never mentioned in the. I think it would have been great if Tisea had said with Yennefer later in the episode when they're at the, what is it, Silver Heron bathhouse, something like, I tried to probe her mind, but she's too powerful. She's. Use that encounter as additional evidence for Tisea's kind of coming around to Yennefer's side of calling a conclave, uniting the Brotherhood, and then also allowing Ciri to matriculate into Aretuza. So
I didn't need the payoff in this episode. They could pay it off later on, but where they're at now, I was good with the scene.
Yeah, okay.
Man, you're just like this. You need payoff immedially.
No,
just because Tisea in this episode didn't go to Yennefer and be like, "Hey, I had this interaction. Wow, she's impressive." Doesn't mean we're not going to get it. So
that's true. I don't need payoff immediately. When you throw 8 different plot lines and 30 different characters with people making decisions that don't make a ton of sense in the universe, it makes it you need to make sure that your stuff hits home, because otherwise people are going to forget about it. For instance, well, I don't need to go into why are we still talking about monoliths in season 3 when we have the actual plot of the story. But the other thing is, I like it when people have the conversations that it makes sense for them to have given their recent experiences. If Tisea and Yennefer are talking about Ciri, it would make sense for Tisea to relate the only thing that she knows about Ciri, or her only encounter with Ciri, which apparently was either that scene was important or not. And if it was important, it would have been included in her conversation with Yennefer about Ciri. And if it wasn't, then it makes sense that it wasn't, but then it's not going to be paid off. I think these are my concerns, dude.
Next positive. Anybody else happy Gallatin is dead? I know you are, because we mocked him in the last episode because he talks like this, and this is his only character development, is that he's going to talk with a lower tone and be really rough.
Yeah, I mean, the show, the tree of this show has way too many branches, and you need to trim some off. So, yes, I'm glad Gallatin is dead. I don't like what they did to Cahir in pursuit of it.
But again, we've talked a bunch of times, they're going to make decisions that have to get them back on track with the books, because they said season 3 is going to be more in line with the books. And just like with Geralt and Ciri, and Yennefer, I disagree with how they got back on track with them. I disagree with how they got back on track with Cahir, but at least Gallatin is dead. Last one. You're the last one.
My last like here. And again, I'll come back to the point. We've spent this entire reaction talking about people other than The Witcher in this episode. I think all of our complaints and all of our likes are about things that have either nothing or very little to do with Geralt. Kind of continuing that on, but maybe I can find a way to shoehorn the title character into this section. I really liked Annika and Otto, the druid and werewolf couple. Annika is, we're told she was a friend of Geralt's mother. There was a little tension there at first, but both of them assisted with treating the fake Ciri, who we learn is named Taryn, I believe. And we also get a little backstory of Otto. Geralt was contracted by some villagers to kill him as a werewolf, but Geralt was able to find a cure, or at least a treatment, so he could keep his werewolf condition under control. That is tested in this episode, thanks to some magical possession of Taryn and stuff that she does. But I really liked I like those scenes. I like those characters. I thought it was nice. And that's the type of side characters that I like having in the show, because they help the main character advance the plot, learn information, overcome challenges. They don't become the focus of the episode, or they're not going to become the focus of the season, but they were interesting and enjoyable.
Yeah, you liked it more than I did.
You didn't really.
I thought they were fine. Yeah.
Yeah. I guess
if anything, they just randomly killed off Geralt's mom in this episode. And
we didn't really talk about that, did we?
No, but the worst thing to me is just it's constant. I have no reason to feel bad about Geralt's mom dying, because I've never interacted with her. We've only had like 2 scenes where Geralt has talked about her, and I'm just not that invested in really any of these characters outside of Geralt, who I won't care about anymore after this season. So
well, all of these characters are about an inch deep, and the show is a mile wide. Too many characters. We don't spend nearly enough time with any of them. As a result, characterizations they can be inconsistent. People take actions that should have more meaningful consequences than we see them receiving. We just move past it. Example there, of course, the biggest one is Yennefer and Voleth Mare. And the end result is a show that you don't really like a lot of the characters. I think that's the other problem. It's like this episode,
you just never spend enough time with any of them. And I was thinking about that with Jaskier in this one. Like in season 1, you get a lot of relationship building between Geralt and Jaskier. And for the most part, it's only 3 plot lines in season 1. In season 2, it gets a little bit more convoluted. But then in season 3, there's like, and we've counted, there's like 12 subplots that are all going on at the same time. And you're never spending enough time with any one character or 2 characters to develop relationships that create meaningful reactions when things happen in the show. So, I mean, you could kill Dijkstra. I wouldn't give a shit. You could kill pretty much anybody outside of Geralt, Yennefer, Ciri, Jaskier, and I wouldn't care.
Yeah. I think you've said it. They don't spend enough time actually developing the characters. It just feels rushed. I've read the books, so to the extent that they replicate the plot of the books, I've been spoiled, but I've done a pretty good job of avoiding things. I've only watched the first 3 episodes, haven't watched 4 and 5. From what I hear, though, I think it's episode 5 that it's basically all of the same scenes presented from a different perspective, and that being just a different camera angle. And so if you only give us 8 episodes,
I actually really like episode 5. I watched ahead, but
Sean, okay.
But can confirm, I actually really like episode 5.
Okay, well, I'm looking forward to that. But basically, the shoehorning in of all of these side plots at the expense of the main plot has resulted in superficial characters that we don't care about, who make bad decisions that we move past just to get to the next thing. And
even worse with season 3, it's not just to get to the next thing. It's to get back on track with the books.
To get back on track with the books.
Which makes it even worse to me, because then I'm like, you wasted an entire second fucking season. Instead of rushing season 3 like you are, you could have like approached the first 3 seasons with a detailed, planned out process, and you wouldn't be rushing it like you are. And we could have proper character development, meaningful interactions between characters, and things would make sense.
Yep. You could build a world that people would understand where things are, how things are connected. You wouldn't make stupid mistakes like saying gold rusts. Yeah. I mean, we're talking about, you've referenced episode or season 4. Did you see at least some of the initial stats that only 1.1 million people tuned into episode 1 of this
season 3?
Yeah. And something around 50% finished the first 5 episodes. So this audience is just dwindling, and I don't blame them. I mean, a lot of people were turned off at the way season 2 ended. Henry Cavill departing, even though he's still in this season, we know that they had to kind of do a whole marketing campaign talking about how Henry Cavill is still Geralt. But then the product on the screen speaks for itself, and people aren't going to stick around. I mean, I have had no urge to watch any faster than the speed at which I'm watching. So I don't know if we're going to get an episode or season 4 at this point. I don't know if it's been officially given the green light, but
if it has current writer strike and actor strike. So, I mean, they're not going to start filming anytime soon.
Yeah. Maybe this just gets the kind of the Disney Plus treatment. I think Disney or Lucasfilm is really good about doing this, where they don't really announce anything that's been canceled, but they cancel things. So that Rian Johnson trilogy that we
just
mentioned
never happened.
Yeah.
Wasn't there a Benioff and Weiss?
There was going to be a Benioff and Weiss trilogy, I think, that didn't happen. So I don't know. This season is probably the reckoning for The Witcher. And I don't know if they've done enough, and I don't know if they will be able to do enough to salvage things.
That's it for episode 3.
Yeah, to stick around as we plot this trajectory.
We'll discuss episode 4 next week. You can follow us on Facebook, Elves, Rings, and Nerdy Things. You can email us at elvesringsnerdythings@gmail.com. Please reach out to us and let us know what you think about The Witcher. We'll continue through the rest of season 3, which is, I think there's another 3 episodes in volume 2. Correct?
And it drops
for a total of 8
in late July, I think.
Yeah, late July. So we'll do an episode for each new episode of The Witcher as they come out. And then we'll try to figure out what we're going to do next, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. Otherwise, thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you next week.
Bye.
Bye-bye.